Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news, sir, we shall be discussing the important articles related to economy from the Hindu newspaper. India to grow at 8%, says World Bank. World Bank has given its projections for the growth of the economies, and previously during the COVID, during 2020, World Bank had reduced the growth margin of India, and the estimate for the current fiscal year was 8.3 percentage, but because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the inflationary pressures and the commodity price increases, the inflation and the various impacts has reduced the growth rate of India. Now the revised estimates stand at 8 percentage, and the financial year 23-24 the estimates is at 7.1 percentage. The World Bank also has said that because of the crisis, the growth in the South Asia will be affected by almost 1 percentage of GDP, and it has given various suggestions for the governments to protect the vulnerable sections from the increase in inflation, because during the increase in inflation, it is the poor that is getting affected more than the rich, because the major part of the income of the poor would be spent on the food, and now the inflation is because of the food inflation. So the people who get affected more are the poor people. And this article, amidst war, India looks up to increase its grain export. Now because of the situation in Russia and Ukraine, the wheat exports are getting distorted because Russia is a major wheat supplier. Now India has excess production of wheat, and India is taking this opportunity to increase the grain and wheat exports. This article is again about the increase in inflation. In the recent Monetary Policy Committee meeting, the accommodative stance was continued, but RBI Monetary Policy Committee said that they're moving away from the accommodative policy, and now they're going to focus on the inflation targeting. And the editorial says that the increase in the inflation now it's majorly driven by the increase in food prices. On one side, the food supply is getting distorted, so the prices are increasing. On the other side, the global effects like the increase in edible oil prices, the sunflower oil prices because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, that is also getting increased. So the food prices are driving the CPI inflation, and even there majorly when it comes to the prices of food and beverages, which almost makes up the major part of the CPI index, the inflation is on a higher side. And even when it comes to prices of oil and fats, that also rose by almost 18.8 percentage to the compared to the last year. And this increase is majorly because of the disruption of sunflower oil imports from Russia and Ukraine. And the RBI governor has also pointed out that because of the war's impact and the supply chain disruptions, the feed cost are increasing. The cost of feed for the poultry and the cattle are increasing, because of which it would have direct impact on the meat, dairy and milk prices. And in yesterday's news, sir, we have looked at that when compared to the inflation in the urban areas, the inflation in the rural areas is more, and vast majority of the poor people live in the rural areas, and as we just discussed, the poor people spend a major part of their income on food. So if the food prices increases, if the inflation is because of the food price increase, then the poor people will get affected more, and they would be further driven into poverty. And because of the increase in food prices, it will also increase the affordability problem, and because of which again it will have impact on the nutrition, because people won't be able to afford nutritious food. And all this is without factoring the increase in fuel prices in the last month. So if the fuel prices of petrol and diesel increase are factored in, which will be having an impact on the economy after say 20 days or 1 month, by next month the increase in food prices would be even more, because of the increase in fuel prices of petrol and diesel, the logistical cost and transportation cost increases, and that would have impact on every product. In the text and context page, this article is about the solar energy targets of India and where India is lacking and what India has to do to bridge the gap. The article begins by saying that India will miss its 2020 target of achieving 100 gigawatt of solar capacity installation, and that is majorly because of rooftop solar capacity being low. So let's see what is India's solar policy. From the year 2011, the cumulative annual growth rate in the solar sector installation is almost 59%. We have grown from 0.5 gigawatt in 2011 to 55 gigawatt in 2021. And the major scheme here is the National Solar Mission. Previously it was known as Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission. And the total installed capacity target was set to 20 gigawatts by 2022. And the Prime Minister has revised the target, and in 2015 the target was revised to 100 gigawatts, and by 2030 we are supposed to achieve 300 gigawatts. Currently, when it comes to the installed solar capacity in the entire world, India stands at 5th place. The top are being China, then USA, Japan and Germany. And of the all total solar panel capacity installed, the major share is by the grid connected utility scale project, wherein solar panels are installed on huge acres of land and they are connected to the electricity grid. They make up almost 77% of the solar power plants, and the remaining comes from the grid connected rooftop plants and off grid projects. Off grid projects are standalone projects which are not connected to the grid. The example could be solar pumps near the wells of the farmers, which are not directly connected to the grid, but the solar pump is run by the solar energy. So this is an example of off-grid solar project. So what does the report say? The report says that 40 gigawatt of solar capacity of rooftop has been met, and 60 gigawatt of utility scale target has been met. So we have been performing well when it comes to utility scale targets, but almost 25 gigawatts of the 40 gigawatt target of the solar rooftop target is a shortfall. We are not performing there well. And what are the reasons for rooftop solar adoption being less? The government bought this scheme to incentivize the use in residential, institutional buildings and in social areas. And in the second phase, the government also gave central financial assistance to increase the installation of rooftop solar panels. But it has not been according to the wishes of the government. And what are the reasons? The main reasons are supply chain disruptions because of the pandemic. Previously, the problems were that consumer didn't have awareness. There was inconsistency of policy and subsidies between central government and the state government, and there was the financing problem. But now, because of increase in consumer awareness, reduction in technology cost, reduction in the overall cost of installation, increasing the grid tariff, when you connect your solar project to the grid, there is a concept of net metering. So the amount of solar production that you produced on your rooftop solar would be calculated, and the amount of electricity that you use from the grid would be calculated. So if there is a difference, it would be net set off. If you have produced more than what you have consumed, the electricity tariff company will pay you the amount because you have supplied excess to the grid. But if you have consumed more, then you will have to pay the amount to the electricity board. And the consumer awareness is also increasing, and at the same time there is a growing need for cutting energy cost. When it comes to all the businesses and the institutions, one of the major costs that make up their variable cost is the electricity cost. So they also want to reduce that. So going by all these reasons, there should have been ideally an increase in the rooftop solar installation. But because of various problems, it has not happened. And what are those problems? The first one is the supply chain disruption because of COVID pandemic, and there are regulatory roadblocks. Then there is limit to net metering. The people who have supplied excess, they have not been paid on time. So all this demotivate the people to install. And again, the taxes on the imported solar cells and modules. India currently is not able to produce much. We are majorly importing it from China for all the solar cells and modules. In order to increase the domestic production, the government is imposing a high customs duty and tax on the imported modules, because of which the cost of the solar cell is becoming high. And there are problems related to finance where it comes from the banking side, and delays or rejection of approvals, then unpredictability when it comes to future open access charges. So all this is inhibiting the installation of rooftop solar installation. So what we should do, we have a target of achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2070, and the center put a 2020 target of, in 2020 center put a target of 450 gigawatts of renewable energies, and out of that 300 was from the solar rooftop. Now because of the various issues, maybe the center would allocate the amount that was supposed to be installed under the rooftop solar, maybe the center would allocate that to the utility based target. So again, more people would be incentivized to install the huge utility based solar panels. But again, this has a limitation because the amount of land is limited. We cannot always go for the utility based target. So slowly now, because the utility based target is achieved and the amount of land available now is less, maybe now the people will switch for the rooftop solar panels. So the center should aggressively push this by giving incentives in the form of finance and solving all the regulatory roadblocks. We have been reading about the economic crisis in Sri Lanka and the foreign exchange crisis and how it has impacted the polity of Sri Lanka. But again, on the northern neighbor of Nepal, there is also a crisis which is slowly increasing, and that crisis is also a foreign exchange crisis. During the COVID pandemic, over this last 2-3 years, the Nepalese foreign exchange reserves have decreased by almost 18.5 percentage. In July 2021, they had foreign exchange reserves to the tune of almost $12 billion. Now it has reduced to $10 billion. And this $9.58 billion will be enough to pay the 7 months import bill. So after that, if the foreign exchange reserves doesn't increase, Nepal also will go into a similar crisis like Sri Lanka. And what is the problem? Because Nepal is a landlocked country, it has to highly depend on the imports for everything. And the major imports are the fuel imports, and the current retail inflation is 7.14 percentage, which is almost 1 percentage points more than India. Even though the Nepal's foreign exchange reserves appears healthy now because it is almost $10 billion, if it doesn't take proper steps from now, it would have a similar crisis like Sri Lanka. Because Nepal is a lower middle income company and it is a landlocked company, and it has to regularly import because it is landlocked, and the major revenues that Nepal used to get was because of the tourism sector. Because of the pristine Himalayan mountain ranges that Nepal has, it used to attract tourists from all over the world. Now because of the pandemic, the tourism sector is the most affected sector during the pandemic. Now the tourism sector got affected, then the major effect also came from the decline in the foreign exchange remittances. The Nepalis used to work in the abroad countries, and the foreign exchange used to sustain the economy. Now because of the pandemic, many people lost jobs and the foreign exchange remittances also reduced, because of which again the problem is persisting. And also there is the factor of Russia-Ukraine conflict which is there on the entire world, and it is driving inflation to a higher side. So as we can sum up, on one side there is tourism sector problem, then the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the major problem currently is the reduction in foreign exchange remittances. And as we discussed, Nepal has to pay for the oil imports, and Nepal majorly imports from the Indian Oil Corporation. Indian Oil Corporation is a major supplier of oil for Nepal, and Nepal used to do that through the Nepal Oil Corporation. So now because of the crisis and because of exhausting all the amount that the company had, the Nepal Oil Corporation doesn't have amount to pay even the next installment. So it has gone to the Nepalese government for bailing it out. Again, the Nepalese government doesn't give it enough funds to pay the next installment of oil. And because of its poor financial status, the Nepalese Oil Corporation is a public sector undertaking, and because it is in bad condition economically, it can't even go for market borrowing because the investors won't have confidence in investing such a company. And again, there is the problem of politics. Nepal's history has shown that during the 2015-16 blockade, when India couldn't supply oil to Nepal, and because of disruption of fuel supply from India, it caused internal disturbances in Nepal, and it also got affected the India-Nepal relationship. So very soon Nepal has to conduct elections, but the election commission of Nepal is in a dilemma because for conducting elections they need at least 10 billion Nepalese rupees, and if they divert the amount from the current imports, then the crucial amount, the 7 month period that they have, that would further reduce. So this is again a problem for Nepal. So we'll have to wait and see what Nepal would do. One thing is clear, if it doesn't take proper steps from now and control its foreign exchanges, curtail on the wasteful imports, and doesn't import too much on the wasteful expenditures, they should probably put a ban on the import of luxury items, and they should only import essential goods and services. And at the same time they should also promote the tourism sector again, as the lockdowns are opening up now all over the world. There is ease of restrictions, the tourism sector has to be focused, and they should also focus on the increasing in foreign exchange reserves through the remittances. If Nepal doesn't do this, very soon in another 6 months or 8 months, it will also be in the similar situation that Sri Lanka is facing today. In the business page, there is no important article that we will have to discuss. Just go through all the headlines, no need to go through any of the details. These are the articles related to economy today. Thank you so much.